The events of yesterday and today are a highlight of our academic year, marking the 22nd occurrence of Hammons School of Architecture's annual librarian exhibition and awards. Librarian is a Latin word designating a bookcase. The word evokes the role buildings play as containers and organizers of experience and knowledge, and emphasizes the continuing role of books, not just images, but also texts, as essential tools for architectural inquiry and practice. Student projects were nominated by student faculty for an end-of-the-year exhibition, which can now be seen in the atrium. And in this room, we have 4 nominated thesis projects, which were reviewed yesterday by our alumnus, Josh Ogren, our distinguished visiting tutor at Tolla, and Kara Collins from the Springfield firm Dick Wells Architecture. At the Librarian Prize's inception, only a single winning project was selected from across the final 3 years of the program, and announced following a public lecture on the final day of the academic year. In recent years, the awards program has been expanded to include recognitions for the most distinguished thesis project, comprehensive project, and a third project drawn from a group of large entries. Winning students are awarded gift certificates from Will and Stout Architectural Books in San Francisco, representing the faculty's continued belief in the importance of professional libraries for students and emerging practitioners. The awards will be announced following today's lecture and question period. It is now a privilege to introduce our distinguished visiting tutor. AlA Tolla is an architect, educator, and co-founder of LawTech, a New York-based practice she leads with Giuseppe Lignano. Her work advances a precise and critical engagement with architecture as a system of material flows, logistics, and transformation. Trained in Italy and practicing internationally, she has developed an approach that situates design within the larger economies of reuse, displacement, and global circulation. LawTech's work is recognized for its sustained investigation into the reuse of industrial artifacts, most notably shipping containers, as a primary architectural medium. These projects are not formal exercises, but operate as constructed arguments about waste, mobility, and the afterlives of standardized systems. Projects such as Puma City and APAP Open Studios demonstrate how architecture can reframe existing infrastructures into new spatial, cultural, and urban organizations. In parallel, AlA Tolla's academic work, including her teaching at Columbia University Graduate School of Architecture, Planning and Preservation, JSAP, extends these questions into pedagogy. Her studios operate as platforms for experimentation, asking students to engage architecture beyond the building's scale, to consider networks, territories, and systems as active design material. Across both practice and teaching, her work positions architecture as an operative framework, one that engages not only form, but the political, environmental, and economic realities embedded within material life cycles. Please join me in welcoming AlA Tolla.
Thank you, Xavi, for this wonderful introduction, and thank you everybody for inviting me, and thank you all the students for providing this beautiful work that we've been reviewing. It's been great to spend also a little bit of time with your work, not just you listening to us. My talk is a two-voice talk. I will be presenting you 20 projects, which is quite ambitious, that span both in time, nature, program, and scale. Some are small, some are big, some are old, some are new. And at the same time, I'll be presenting you also the world that we inhabit at LawTech, the world that inspires us, the world that we look at, And the way that word appears, and you will see right away, is through photography. We have been photographing for 35 years the infrastructures and objects that surround us that generally people don't look at, and found real inspiration in that. You will see that there's a lot of connection between the work and the world. So the two voices will be very present. I also want to warn you that I will bring a lot of New York, in the sense that the lecture is very dense. It's all about density, so I hope you can bear it. I will start right away, and then, happy to take questions after and be in conversation with all of you. One last thing, I want to honor the fact that today is May 1st, which is for us Labor Day, so just a shout out to all the people that make our work possible, architecture work possible and our work possible. Okay, let's go. To see, to notice, to observe, which is also to regard, to consider. We start with observation. We start with observation in the early 90s, when we enter this other world, the American landscape. We marvel at its make, not at its history, not at its monuments. We begin to think of these as monuments. Monuments of a modern world, direct, blunt, big, in your face, also fantastical, exuberant, joyful. We are taken by this tension. Everything is practical, yet expressive, complex. I'll start by taking you to a public building we just completed on a New York's waterfront, the Cubes at Socrates Sculpture Park. It's a very important building for us because it's our first public building in New York. It's a small community center with offices for the people that operate the park. Socrates Sculpture Park was founded on a landfill by a group of artists, so it's a very guerrilla kind of site to start with, and it's sort of like it serves the Queens community, which is a very mixed community. The project provides a large open space for the community for exhibitions, installations, gatherings, and then on the second level, office space for the people that run the operation. Here you see it more lived in, and a double light connects the two spaces, and this slanted window and skylight create a connection to the park, together with this open cube that offers both a space to work outside and a space to engage with the surrounding grounds. The project for us is particularly interesting because it recycles a project that we had already done. So the small cube that you see in the circle is a project that we did for the Whitney Museum called the Whitney Studio, when the Whitney was still on Madison Avenue in the sculpture garden of the original Whitney Museum. And the building is a building designed by Marcel Breuer, brutalist, a fantastic building. And we were asked to insert a building that would stay for the last year and a half before the Whitney moved to the new Renzo Piano building downtown. And we had to insert it in this little moat below the cantilever. The building, of course, is a landmark building, so very complex both in terms of operation and siting. You can see the aging of the containers that we used. This is the first time that we had the idea of intervening on the containers, thinking of a single gesture on the stack. So we took these 6 20-foot containers and basically ran a shear plane that cut both the slanted windows along the two sides and the skylight at the top, but also it cut the interior to create the double height, which is the same double height that we've seen in the Socrates project. And I'm just going to show you this very briefly. This is the install at the Whitney. The museum has large glass panes on the lower level. All the lawyers of the museum were behind the glass, waiting for disaster to happen. Every time we do a project, we also have to think about the logistics, especially when a project is temporary. So here we also have to think about how these containers would be dropped down, stacked on top of one another, and then sliding to place. We had to protect the floor because the floor is also landmarked. And then, of course, interestingly, the building stayed in there for a year and a half, and it was used mainly for exhibition and educational programs. It was very beloved, and luckily when they pulled it out, they had the intuition that it could be still used by somebody else. So they donated it to Socrates Culture Park, and it was stored for many years while we designed the larger building that Socrates asked us to design, and also while we got through all the permits and everything. Being a Parks Department project, it took forever. But it did creep out. This is artwork by a friend, E.B. Day, and made it to the park where it's now permanently set. So if you go to New York, you can go visit, and it's there day and night. To see, to notice, to observe, which is also to forget, to unlearn. We forget what things are and why. We observe what things are and why. We unlearn what things are and why. We photograph what things are and why. We record with our 35mm cameras and slides at the time, and then with the smallest portable camera, digital, always in hand, now with our phones. We call this 36-year-long recording urban scan. It is our very soul. We record accumulations, piles, stacks, formations. We begin to think of these as other forms of buildings, other assemblies. Flimsy buildings that hold, protect, and carry our things. Buildings that sit somewhere or that move around. We admire the ingenuity of things, its light efficiency, its neutral inventiveness, its invisible inventiveness, the constant movement, its background movement. We explore this motion, this time going south, in a project for Bal Harbour Shop. This is a mobile that we designed for Bal Harbour Shop, which is a large retail operation in Bal Harbour, Florida. And it's a mid-century retail space, all black and white, very elegant, that is completely centered on a garden. So we had the intention to do exactly the same, to move around the experience of Bal Harbour Shop. And so we sited these 2 lines of containers around the garden. And then very inspired by the garden, we had this intuition that we could cut the lower containers to create a portico following the shape of the shadows of the palm trees. And so we did it, which was a really exciting thing because we had never cut the containers not on a more geometric pattern. And the building has this very high articulation on the inside and is very mute on the outside. You will see also why, because its siting is dismal, to say the least. And then inside, the experience is through these corridors and this beautiful garden, and then the public spaces. And as I said before, the building is mobile. So as per the lecture you heard yesterday, when we design, often we need to design logistics together with designing the building itself. And in this case, the logistics were the one of moving these 28 containers, so no small things, and also the garden that these containers contained that had to be organized through these very large planters. And so, this drawing sort of shows the intention and the idea and the moving of the fleet below the objects. And then the other interesting thing was that they asked us to, so the building moves every 2 months, and in the 2 months that is set on a destination, every 2 weeks shops rotate. So we had to come up with a system also for the interior, so the shops could bring their personality, let's say. And so we decided to use this road case system, and one of the walls, the back walls of every shop, has this infrastructure that allows to attach different kind of cases, and also a graphic panel, a fabric panel, so that shops could brand their space. And here you see it actually done, not just in a rendering. And then we also had a similar thought for the building, because we knew that the building was going to occupy marginal spaces in different areas. So the idea was that this module could be deployed in different ways and take different shapes. As I was saying before, the siting was always dismal, because basically it's parking lots of large either shopping center or food centers or the like. But in an interesting way, the building has been moving quite a bit and is still moving. To see, to notice, to observe, which is also to wonder, to marvel, to be amused. We're amused by a family of ducks living above our head, on the roof of our former studio. How they congregate or not. We're delighted by their bands and puzzled by their mystery. Covert, mute, nondescript volumes. We observe their aggregation and congregation, their tight proximity and or their expansive distribution, eventually erased by a wall or a ceiling. This is not design, this is design. We photograph their sudden appearance, their impromptu presence, their sneaking through existing spaces. We appreciate how they call attention or how they dismiss attention. Our intention here is to call attention, to capture walkers-by along the Anyang riverfront in Seoul, South Korea, for APAP Open School on the ledge of a public park in Seoul, Korea. So this is also a community space that we designed under the artistic directorship of the Kyong Park. For the ones of you who know, Kyong Park was the founder of the Storefront for Art and Architecture, which is a very, very important gallery in New York, nonprofit that does a lot of interesting work still to these days. And he was when he was, of course, made the artistic director, he really wanted to discuss Korean developments, which is what you see on the background. So the idea that large swaths of the city were completely erased to build this very generic housing, and in that they were erasing, of course, a lot of urban fabric. So the idea of citing a building, as I said, it was very identifiable, capturing a building that really captures, so that we could start beginning to discuss urban development. We had to design a building to fit in the space, both in section, because the topography slopes down, and not touching the existing trees. The building it operates at these 3 different levels: the space underneath, which is a gathering space covered, and then one container drops down to allow entry, and inside is a meeting and exhibition area. And then you go up to the 3rd level, and you're hovering over the space, and again in contact and viewing the city. And here you see how it also uses the topography. We draw projects and buildings, 8 containers on a fishbone pattern, one bending down, one up. We draw them on cardboard boxes. Here, 1 cardboard box for eggs, 15 dozen, and 1 for kombucha, my favorite, ginger ale. Boxes we find, boxes we get, these boxes are everywhere, we notice. We draw them with our laser cutter. Its size limit is our constraint. In order to make larger drawings, we need to either assemble smaller pieces or cut and fold them to fit the machine. Then we burn. The machine burns. Burning is also a form of removal, as it is in our architectural work when we work with these objects. When we burn, we disclose the cardboard box corrugation and let it act as the corrugation of our box, of our container, dismissively of scale. We make a series of drawings called foldables on different boxes we collect. The cardboard box is the smaller unit of transportation that occupies the inside of containers often. Drawings of different projects we work on, a series that makes one larger drawing when together or folds discretely into yet another box, which ends up in the window of the gallery. This Side Up is the name of the exhibit at AlA Projects, a Lower East Side gallery for which we design also the signage, another attempt not to erase, another form of layering. Foldable number 9 is our building in South Africa. It includes the adjacent mural of Nelson Mandela, one of our superheroes. And this is Driveline Studios. This is our largest building to date. It was a very exciting project for us because it called us to develop a residential building as part of a redevelopment of a neighborhood. So it wasn't just a building, it was really thinking about how to convert this incredible urban infrastructure that Johannesburg has, because during the period of the gold rush, during the apartheid, of course, the city was very highly built. And the new neighborhood is centered on Fox Street. The developers took over this industrial building, Arts on Main, and really focused the development on arts and craft and local artisanship, aiming at a post-apartheid generation that is willing to mix and walk and be pedestrian and be together. And then they called us to develop that triangular site. And we developed Driveline Studio. It uses 140 shipping containers that are set on this triangle. They're hinged at the shorter side. The project is called Drivelines because the original building was a car repair shop called Drivelines. We tried to save it and to build on top of it, but of course to build the foundation through the building was too expensive. This is a project that was done on a very, very tight budget. The building is a mile away from City Deep, which is a container dry port, the largest dry port in South Africa. So the containers came directly from there. You can see the mural of Nelson Mandela on the foreground that we incorporated in our drawing. And it's 100 units of housing. They're centered on this backyard with a little pool, really with the intention of creating a communal space. All the units have outdoor spaces in the front that they can spill out into, and they're done. We went to visit the site a year or more after it was inhabited, and it was really great to meet some of the tenants. Here I am talking to 2 of them. It also offers great, great recreational space, barbecue and pool, and great views of the downtown. We reused some of the cutouts to make sculptures, and then COVID arrived. And so this little dream of this neighborhood called Maboneng, of course, was severely hit because Johannesburg was severely hit by COVID. Luckily, the owners of the building called us And they told us that they felt that the building needed to be painted. Originally, we didn't paint the container. We selected them by color, so they were half blue, half green, because that is what was available. And then we decided that if we had to paint them, we wanted to do something radically different. So, and because the idea was to bring something positive, we decided to go with a sunrise color scheme, and that's how the building is right now. We went to see it last year with our students at Columbia, and very excited to see that it's still healthy and alive despite the hardship that it surrounds it. To see, to notice, to observe, which is also to register, to log, to chronicle, to document. We come from deep history. Our origin, southern Italian city of Napoli, 3,000 years or so of history, built over and over, layered. We love a city that keeps track of its many pasts. We love a city that displays its many pasts. Also, we love friction, and to embrace friction, to embrace discordance, clashes, things incomplete, in progress, past, present, recurrent, transient, things not fully resolved. Here, in this Brooklyn house, we keep some past and layer some present. This is Carroll House, a single-family home that we built in Brooklyn. You can see how we keep the past and also the present. It's another kind of like a very important project for us, because on one end it occupies a very typical New York lot. It's 25 by 100, and but it has the issue that being a corner lot, we were really called to create privacy. And we had this intuition that we could take the stack of container and cut the stack instead of you working at the single container scale. And in doing that, we responded to a lot of zoning. The tallest point is the tallest point we could reach. The lower part is because the back had a requirement for a side yard. So it responds, the massing, although it feels very sculptural, respond to a lot of actual issues of the site. The very interesting thing in this idea of shearing these containers along the diagonal, that we quickly realized that we could create outdoor spaces at every level. So it really changes the typical typology of a townhouse, where the ground level is the only one that has an outdoor. Instead, here the outdoor is everywhere. And then it's also the first time that we cut the container really brutally without thinking. These are the doors, so it's the rear of the container. We just cut where we needed to cut. And here you can see the interior organization, with the larger level being the communal areas, the second level being the kids' areas with the room, and then the shared space for studying and playing, and then the top level for the parents originally. The entry, the large living space, the diagonal space, which of course was the most challenging and the most fun. And then the relationship between indoor and outdoor at every level, with these three large sliding glass panels, and then one stair that connects all the levels together. Solar panels, of course, are installed. And then here from inside out, also to see how this relationship between inside and outside is shaped. The kids' room, where they chose their own color. And moment of poetry, of course, and then the reusing, being smart on how you use and reuse, cutting diagonally, reusing the cuts to form the edges of the deck. The exciting thing of seeing the volume of the house going up in 4 days. So the site was empty, we just had the foundations on. And then literally in 4 days, the entire thing went up, which was quite magical. Then it took a long time to complete, but that's another story. You can also see how beat up the containers are. We try to get containers when they are already outside of the circuit of movement and shipping of their primary function. And we got, because it took much longer to build than we expected, we got really enamored with the containers as they were and tried to convince the owner not to paint the building, but there was no way to not paint. They really wanted the house to be brown. So we managed to leave those strips on the facade where the original container colors show. And then during one of our lectures, a student mentioned that is exactly like Tatooine. And from that moment on, we got to show it because it's really remarkable. And the drawing that we did for Carol House, we loved because the scoring of the cardboard box ominously is the same color of the building. To see, to notice, to observe, which is also to jump, to leap, to imagine this as a world, to imagine this as a city, to imagine buildings, streets, piazzas. It's the early 90s as we stumble across a container depot in New Jersey. We had no idea of what a shipping container is. Yes, believe it or not, there was a time where we collectively had no idea about what a shipping container was. We jumped literally from the excitement of this discovery, of its large scale. These are not just objects, they are modular, stackable, same. We realize that this is a system. We see its potential. We jump to learn about it, the container's intermodal ability to travel on train, truck, and ship, its structure, its logic. We embrace its sturdy basic essence and quality, its elongated space, and its previous lives. Foldable number 1 is an exploded drawing showing moving parts. Proudly, it is now part of the Museum of Modern Art collection, telling another story of movement of our Puma City, a 24-container movable building that requires many additional drawings to understand and communicate its operation, sequencing, and moving components. It was actually installed and moved in China, in Europe, in Alicante, Spain, and then in Boston here. And we had to produce all these drawings that, interestingly, were not for us. They were really for the people that were moving it. So again, when I say we have to, this for us was the first time where we literally realized that we were doing two things. We were designing a building and we were designing its mobility as a separate thing. But of course it was very interesting because it also allowed us to make this really complex drawing that could tell people that were operating the building how to move around. And it's so interesting looking at Josh's work yesterday. This is the very low-tech version of the complexity of holding on to different parts. And here you see the building, which was, ambitious both in terms of creating open spaces, shared spaces, very simple in terms of design, in the sense that it's 24 containers, about 11,000 square feet of space that are stacked and then just shifted. And the shifted created these pockets of the cover space, and of course the large cantilever, which is also the biggest public area. To value, to appreciate, to treasure, which is also to grasp with our minds, with our heart, with our soul, with our hands. We call these things artificial nature. Like nature, it grows incessantly, independently, outside of our design, inside of our needs and wants. It also grows abruptly, carelessly, following its own logic, at times paradoxically. The fire escapes are an immediate infatuation for us, such an extreme addition to old buildings with no hesitation. Extreme in their size, location, and setting, a blunt aggression to old, quaint facades. Extreme and everywhere, powerful. There is no design beyond these moments of artificial nature, only its inherent design, its inherent intelligence, the cleverness of the pragmatic responses and solution, utilitarian, matter of fact. There is no authorship in this collection. Back in New York and back in time are communal steps for banal and books. 70 wood doors, reused to transform this ground floor space of a nonprofit, Van Allen Institute. They wanted to really activate the street, and they called us and they said, we have this room and we would like to make it an architecture bookstore and a meeting room. It's a small room, but we immediately understood that we could work with a section, and so the idea of using that section, and then at the same time we found this recycling construction material space, and they had just disassembled the hotel. So there were all these wooden doors available, and we had this intuition that we could use them, and a structural engineer actually worked with us very closely, and they won an award for this project, believe it or not, because of course wood doors are not, they have no kind of scoring, so they had to really testify with their experience to the structure. And very interestingly, the project really did what it was meant to do. It stayed at Van Allen Books for a number of years, and it really activated the street and the space in a very engaging way, which we were very happy about. And then heading south again and heading to right now, this is a community center that we are developing in New Orleans. So here I'm going to show you some renderings for a duo called the Black School, is a nonprofit who does community engagement work through the arts. So what they do, they basically have black youth, mainly high schoolers and some early college students, run an apprenticeship program in their space where they're exposed to graphic design, photography, fashion design, industrial design, art proper. And the building is in the 7th ward, which is a ward that is still in development. In fact, they're already stealing stuff from the construction site. We had to do fences. And he uses containers at the bottom to outline a larger space that you see here, and then containers there will be a big community space, and then containers at the top that will be instead the proper studio for the apprenticeship. So the lower level is really a community space, and it includes also the garden where they'll be running gardening programs. And then here you see the interior, and Joseph is one of the owners who's testing the steel plate of the container and then as the building is right now, it should be completed in a couple of months, but we will do a proper opening in the fall. They want to pass hurricane season, of course. To value, to appreciate, to treasure, which is also to embrace, to welcome. We embrace playfulness, we welcome play, the playfulness of accidents, of curious moments, things that happen, things that just happen, things that occur on their own, improvised, involuntary. We welcome things funny, poetic, surprising, as these objects interact with their surroundings and with time. Banal, bare, basic, blank, careless, common, obvious, ordinary, raw, stripped. Also scaleless, in this case the huge scale to respond to a competition. Full Circle is a competition that we did for San Jose in California. Kind of a very weird competition, but we were interested, of course, because of the weirdness, because we wanted to both celebrate tech and the confluence of these two rivers, the Guadalupe River and the San Jose, Los Gatos River, as a place for bird migration. So this kind of weird idea of celebrating nature and technology. And we thought that it was a really interesting opportunity to use a lot of containers. It uses 1,500 containers. We work with the Surface Design, that is a landscape design office in San Francisco, to really think of this not as a building, but more as a scaffold that would hold different kind of nature, human being one of them, but also others. And really with the intention to use a lot of containers, as there are very, very many on our planet. And then we collaborated with Superbien, an interactive design studio that had this intuition that we could use each container as a single pixel. So this sort of like very low-res screen on the outside. Unfortunately, I don't have a video, but you can imagine that the intention was that it carried the videos of actual recording on site of birds' movement, fish movements, and the like. And then a real jump in scale, full circles, in this case plural, are our spacer light. So we still really like working with our ends, and we work at different scales all the time. We mess around, as I say. So one time we went to one of the container shops, and in a dumpster there were all these steel rings, and we asked, what are those? And they told us, oh, those are wheel spacers that truck uses within the wheels. And they were like, we're disposing them. And we're like, okay, we're taking them. So we did a workshop at the studio within our team, and we decided to use this single continuous light, LED light, and then run different paths within each one of these spacer wheels, and then cast them in rubber. And here they are, coming together with a lot of R&D, and these are the spacer lights that are still working. We're still continuing to do some, so it's pretty exciting to still be able to do some of that work. To value, to appreciate, to treasure, which is also to reclaim, to see value in things dismissed, to recover, to recapture, to rescue. Rescuing an object as an act of love, also rescuing an object, a leftover, as an opportunity to make, to test, to concoct, to mess around, to play. This past summer, we played together with visual artist Stephanie Dinkins on a piece set on the plaza across from the Brooklyn Academy of Music in New York. If we don't, we will. The stories we tell are machines. This is a performative and functional artificial intelligence laboratory that Stephanie is a Black, differently able artist who works with AI to make AI more equitable. So her idea was that AI should be fed actual community stories, not the one that Upper Northern California is feeding it. And so she concocted this thought of having this little booth where she could record community stories, and then a bespoke algorithm transformed the stories into visual images. So there are videos on all the surfaces, the inside. The circle that you see on the inside is both to sit in a circle, but is also to allow a wheelchair to go around. This is a 10-foot container, it's as small as it gets. And you can see a little bit the patterns around. And then as far as our design, in the same bespoke thought of the AI algorithm, we looked at Underground Railroad patterns that were used by enslaved blacks moving from south to north, and they were often quilted, so quilts were hung on homes that were deemed safe or to give direction to enslaved that were moving during the Underground Railroad. And the patterns are the log cabin which implied that it was a safe home. The one on the back is the North Star. Obviously, we were moving north. And then the flying geese on the side. Geese were an important thing because they located areas where water was there. And then on the floor, the drunkyard path that told slaves to move in a zigzag pattern to not leave traces. And then to go to even smaller scale, this project that we did called Theater for One with the set designer Christine Jones. And here you see it installed at the previous Chicago Architecture Biennial. Theater for One also uses the road case technique, which interestingly was designed mainly for music, and here is for performance, but at a larger scale. Basically, it's boxes that are connected to put together one audience member and one performer. So when you are in this booth and this shutter opens up, you are facing the performer and the eyes lock, and it's a very intimate and very powerful experience. The piece has been going around for a while. Here you see it in New York in Times Square, and at the Chicago Biennial, the idea was that the theater was going to go around the city, but at the cultural center, they wanted to have sort of a parking for the theater. And so we had this thought that we could make the blueprint for the theater, because this is the smallest architecture where you can do blueprint one-to-one, and we did them ourselves, doing the cutouts and tape. We did the drawings of the sections, and the installation is called Load In, Load Out. The curators also asked us to frame this work in the context of our other work. So on the outside, especially work that deals with intimacy and small spaces. So on the outside of the blueprint, you see these handmade monitors made with cardboard boxes and fabric that show some of the other work through video. And then another lecture hall, only 2001. Let's see if the sound plays.
And that's when low-tech really started as an idea.
Can you hear?
We became enamored with this mega presence of industrial objects. We started calling it the artificial nature, something that, just like nature, it just grows. The US Post Office carts, you would see a lot of them abandoned in the 90s in New York.
I love this photo because there are three projects.
Three projects.
Like you can already see the stereo chair. So we padded this object, we lifted it on mop sticks, and then we added speakers to the two sides. This is 1993.
And this thing, that is a box spring, an old box spring, and that we bent into a curve to create a workstation. Completely crazy. I mean, the chair made with caution tape, with some sort of framing and caution tape, 100% junk.
We made a small collection of objects, basically, and that was really the beginning.
And this is an important thing also because you are going to transition at some point out of school, right? I was saying before, we started in a very unconventional way because we never worked in an architecture office. We started by making things with things we found, and we literally were making with only things we found, also because we didn't have money to buy things. And we bought fasteners. That's about what we bought. So the collection was really 100% junk, but the idea was one piece of technology and one object. So the one before was speakers and this mail cart. This is the box spring and a computer, I mean, very old one, with many other things to make this workstation, in quotes. Oil drum and a coffee maker makes the gossip chair. And then this set, the electric chairs, the first one has a TV and is a lamp. You don't see the TV, you just see the moving light. The second one is a telephone that was completely dismantled. You could sit and you could put your headsets on and talk through a mic and your hands were free. All of that contraption. And then the third one was, of course, a vanity. So you could do your makeup and dry your hair. There's a blow dryer attached to the end. So the idea of also playing with technology in this very rudimental way, and then the chroma lamps, which are a super vintage project, we still have one at our studio, literally scavenging laundromats for detergent bottles, and with the little discovery that if you add lights inside, they become much more fun. And we had this very lucky circumstance that we sent our slides, believe it or not, with a letter to the creative director of Barney's, which was a very nice department store. It doesn't exist anymore, but they used to do very artsy windows. And they said, yes, we'll show your work. And of course, our work in the theater of a window set up with the fancy clothing by Martin Margiela and the likes looked much more glamorous, but it was our very first exposure, so something that we are very proud of. To value, to appreciate, to treasure, which is also to believe that humble objects and systems do have value. Again, intelligence, efficiency, and inherent logic, yet also expression, that these humble objects have a voice. Scholar Jane Bennett calls it vibrant matter, as all objects are loaded with our hands, our brain, our heart, our memories, our stories. These are some of the things we discuss also in our own teaching with our class. To share and pass along our curiosity and attention for our leftover landscapes, for the things we make and the one we dismiss. And here we're paying attention to things for what they do. In this case, we're paying attention to light. So we did a competition for a public art installation in Australia, where the site was super interesting for us. The site is the little red line on the median of a highway, and in the yellow circle you see the FAR. So we could sit the foot of the structure between those two concrete things, but then up at that height, that structure could expand. So, of course, the constraints were many, and we quickly realized that the constraints are this. This is the object that exists on the highway and can operate on the highway. So we thought, what if we use this light? And we had this idea of making an alphabet with the light, and the piece was meant to announce the arrival to the city of Gold Coast on the coast of Brisbane, and so we did. So there is this kind of crazy permanent installation now there, where of course this is not a sign. This is really a moment where this object that you see spaced very regularly as you drive suddenly congregates and acts differently. And you read it and you don't read it. And you see the letters sometimes on their own, and sometimes you understand what it says, but it definitely announces that something is about to happen, the city arriving. To see, to notice, to observe, which is also a practice, a daily practice. We look, we pause, we crop, we reveal. We reveal to ourselves the intense or delicate world of things around. Our infrastructure, scattered, systematic, nowhere, everywhere, essential, utilitarian, yet rhythmic, expressive, whimsical, poetic. In a site of natural poetry and beauty in Wanshan, China, the birthplace of Taoism, we insert our own infrastructure to support an outdoor experience, focusing on 3 areas for Xiun Mountain Cup. So this is, for us, it was a very interesting project because In China, most people have worked in cities, and we worked in landscape, miraculously. And we were called to build the infrastructure for this outdoor experience. And we looked very closely at the entrance connected to the road, where we had to build a gateway and then a market and infrastructure area, on a high area where the restaurants were going to be, and then a low area where the water connection for water sports had to be. And of course, there was also an idea of creating easy identifiers as a navigation method, so colors were also chosen based on that. The containers are cut on a slant to create these different configurations and to interact with the surrounding landscape. This is the gate building where you buy your tickets and go in. And then the restaurant area where there was meant to be a zip line, but I don't know if they ever installed it. And then the water connection, the aquatic area with the water connection, and these small sheds for storing kayaks and everything. And then in these years of stubborn practice, we put our hands on some of the objects we notice and appreciate. Mundane objects, small and large, enclosures, objects that contain space, often, objects that simply contain. So I wanted to show you also a little bit of our practice outside of the container work, and also connected with the hands-on. So Sink Walls is a project that we did for a publishing company. They had this office with these two large portals that separated the three spaces, and they wanted to create some sort of divider that also allowed some air and light to go through. So we had this idea of using sinks, kitchen sinks, they're stainless steel sinks, and we painted the outside, and then, of course, on the inside, the sinks are also holding their publications. And here is the transparency level. Then Mixer is a project that we did with Henry Urbach Architecture Gallery, and is now part of the Guggenheim collection, where we used a concrete mixer to make a media cocoon. They could still pivot, is installed on a rotating thing. And then inside, the idea is that you could, the PlayStation had just come out, so the center core was the PlayStation, and then there are surveillance cameras to the outside, so you can see what's happening around you, also when you are within. It was all padded on the inside. And then this is called the Envirotainer, is an object that you have all seen, is the one that loads airplanes. We had a commission from MoMA to design a new kind of work environment. This is the Inspirotainer. It's a place where you can think and isolate or connect to others and work collectively. And it was a show in MoMA called Work Spheres that investigated how the work environment is changing. TV Tank uses an oil tank as a place to watch television, as simple as that. We had to cut the tank in slices to enter the gallery, and then in an interesting turn, the slices became individual or couple modules to watch television. Of course, the inside of the tank is completely padded, and sections can be extracted, and some were sold as individual pieces. We use the tank again for a residential project, inserted it on the fourth floor of a building in the West Village. This is Morton Loft, and here the idea was to consolidate the functions that require intimacy, so the bedrooms and the bathrooms, and leave the rest of the space open. So the two on top are the bedrooms, bed pods, we can say, and then the two behind are two bathrooms stacked on top of one another. And the path that connects everything. Russell Fontanes is an apartment that we did in the West Village where we used steel doors. Also, we stumbled across this dismissed steel door in one of the sites where we go rescue construction materials. And the apartment had this interesting thing that the communal stair was in the middle and the two sides were a little too shallow to really be rooms. So we had this idea that we could qualify them through these tunnels, where some of the doors are actual and some are not. So sometimes you can enter space, and sometimes the doors are just there to outline the space. Surf-A-Bed uses TV, so very simple objects. They're all old TVs that we rescue at a Salvation Army, and they form a double of the bed. So the idea is that to watch TV, you can move from pillow to pillow to different directions. It's a communal way to experience this space. This also was done within an art installation, and here you see it in use. So we put our hands on daily mundane objects to reimagine our interaction with them and with each other. But we also put our hands on mundane objects that we transform or not. This time the object is untouched. So the project of stacks is sort of an evolution of the work that we've done with shipping containers, where at one point we thought, what if we stacked them without doing anything to them? And so we started speculating, just doing drawings. The more extensive research is actually a set of videos that are, we call it our low-tech parametric design, because we didn't do it parametrically, we literally did it by moving the containers, but thinking about where, given a set of parameters, a kind of rotation, a kind of shift, what can you create, and can we explore all of the options? And then we went to talk to the people that do our some of our container projects, and we said, would you let us just play with the containers that you have in your yard for a day? And the container intelligence, of course, is in this corner that is called the corner casting, that has a whole set of fittings that allow it to connect or disconnect with others. And so with the container company, we did these two tests. And the intention was to use space. Generally, container stacks are very compact because, of course, they're trying to minimize space occupation. We instead wanted to create a space inside these stacks. So we did a very simple stack square, and then it was really beautiful experience to be able to enter in this different configuration. And then we did another one triangular, and where we just left small gaps to enter. And we did it in one day with the help of a forklift operator, Steve Baiko, who, in this case, we didn't use any of the fittings, we just stacked them because they're used to stack. Steve Baiko was fantastic operator and stacked them very quickly. And for me, the moment that really, it was very beautiful to enter, to see the light, to see these different formations, to be able to be within. But the moment for me that was really touching was when he entered and squatted down to photograph, because this is a man that lives with this object, and this object means nothing to him. And suddenly he could see it in a different light. And for me, that was a really powerful moment. And when we finished this project, we thought that there was potential to use this for public space. And so we continued thinking about larger installation, and then artist JR, some of you may know him, who does these very large photo collages photographing people, came to us and said, would you help me set up this large collage on the Domino waterfront? And so we did this large project, and here you can see we used the fittings. So we used everything as it was. We only modified some of the relative position for this feeling, the way they were connected to one another, so that we could create a non-90-degree angle for the triangle. This is called triangle stack. And then JR installed this very large mural, the Chronicles of New York, on it. The Chronicles of New York ended up falling apart. This was during COVID. It started right before COVID. So after a number of months, the mural fell apart. But because it was COVID and people were using the space a lot because outdoor space was very important, the stack stayed and it was used in many different ways. And an interesting thing of the project is that we couldn't do foundations because it was meant to be temporary. So again, thinking through logistics, we had to come up with another idea, and we had this thought, what if we fill the containers so we can weight down the bottom? And at first we thought sand, and then we thought water, and of course these tote tanks fit the container perfectly. They're modular. Everything now is modular to the container. It's crazy, but you know, this is how impactful this object is. And so we filled, the structural engineer told us that we could fill the two bottom layers, and we formed a WhatsApp group with the team also at the artist studio, and we went in the winter to fill these tanks, which was also a fantastic opportunity for us to be in the project much longer. Here you see the Chronicles of New York, which shows the Williamsburg Bridge that you see also in the background, so it was very strategically positioned. You can see the scale, and the way it was used, again, after, during COVID, also during the Black Lives Matter protests. And then, when the project was taken down, eventually 2 years after, the containers went back to the container shop, and the tanks went back to the tank shop. So we didn't touch anything. And for us, it was very interesting, the idea that we could do something at that scale without impacting the material. Okay. To see, to notice, to observe, which is also to obsess. We work and work and work with this object to these past decades and learn that wherever we are in the world, we find it in great abundance. Discreetly anonymous, omnipresent, in the background, yet there, here, always present. We wonder about numbers. How many on our planet? How many shipping containers at any given time? The video is our attempt to visualize the quest. A sequence of screenshots of all container ports as we follow the coastline of our planet landmasses. Screenshots that keep the same orientation and attempt to include the full port. The act of recording per se is a first identifier. We see the port amounts, their proximity, the mandatory need for every country, even small ones, to have a container port in order to partake in our global economy, everywhere. In the video, a yellow dot marks location, while the other ones are enough to outline our landmasses. We can recognize our atlas. That's how many ports there are. No record exists to testify to the number of containers on our planet. No organization responsible for keeping count. 170 million is the number on the Container Principle book by Alexander Close, published in 2015. We ask AI today, and its answer is an estimated figure of up to 530 million. We do a second video, same ports, this time at the same scale, with the same north orientation. This time we're looking at container stacks. We love their abstract geometry, we love their colors. We wonder, our own ingenuity wonders. Also, we recognize we're in the presence of another world. It's always adjacent, it's always inaccessible, not for us. There is not one single person ever in these landscapes, in these hardscapes. It is a planet within our planet, marvelous yet disjointed. So we take it into our own hands. Spiel for 1 to 29 is our response to the elusiveness and opacity of the shipping world and to its excess. Spiel is an art installation where we decided to take a container and just break it apart. And we found this 20-foot container, very beat up, as you can see, and we decided that we were going to first use it as a diagram, so we wrote on it. The container, the 20-foot container is, which is, it's called a TEU, 20-foot equivalent unit, is also called, and you can verify that on Wikipedia, an inexact unit of cargo, which we thought was quite interesting. So we wrote that it is an inexact unit of cargo, and then we, looking at the container, we also learn how it gets loaded. You can see the pallets, and having seen the water tanks, you can imagine. But we also learned that the top, recording this inefficiency of the container for us was very important. So there are two different colors, and that's, again, a diagram 1-to-1 that registers that inefficiency. And then here you see the way we cut the container. We, for the first time, we cut pieces that were 90 degrees at 18 inches of height. Our intention was to make pieces that you could sit on that were related to the body, that were communal furniture. We call them communal furniture. So we say our container is vivisected or dissected, cut apart or broken open, exploded. Spill is an act of violence and or an exorcism. It's a rebellion. Spill is a spell. To incite, pause. And here you see it as is being done. We did a lot of work ourselves, not the cuts. It was beautiful to be there. But we did all the finishes ourselves. Here you see the pieces cut on the 90 degree. And we intentionally, we didn't want to make pieces that we knew, meaning not the kind of table, the kind of chair that we know, just something else, something more communal, but still very related to the body. It was very interesting to see also the object being cannibalized, one can say, like this. We reused everything. That was another decision, also to take us out of our comfort zone, meaning there's no positive or negative. Everything is positive. Everything is a piece, no matter the shape it has. We labeled everything. Here they are sitting down because they're being labeled S1 to S29. And then you see them in the gallery where we show them, and people using them, which was really fantastic. There were a bunch of gathering, poets went to use them, and the idea that our bodies were finally on these objects with a completely different relationship than the one we have had for many, many years with it. In the gallery, we placed them around the Panama Canal. So the graphics on the floor is the Panama Canal. All containers are built in China, and they come to us through the Panama Canal, and they rarely go back. So they accumulate on our coast. So we thought it was just right to bring that out. And then the larger pieces at the back, they were around the videos, some of which I showed before. And for our spiel, we worked hard to try and find data on the actual container we used. This is the plate that generally gives information on the container. We learned that the container is designated out of service. It is container number AKLU 60222124. It was built in 2006. It is red. Its travel records, entirely typical of the inestimable amount of shipping containers in the world, are mostly unknown. We know that over the past 2 years, it has been to China, Singapore, Korea, Myanmar, and between those places in international waters on the lowest sea. To see, to notice, to observe, which is also to love. Our object of love is elusive. Our object of love is invasive. Our object of love is an invasive species, and this makes it all the more urgent for us to keep at it. That's it.